What are your thoughts, sticking on artificial intelligence a little bit, about the displacement of jobs? That's another perspective that candidates like Andrew Yang talk about.
Yang Gang forever.
Yang Gang. So he, unfortunately, speaking of Yang Gang, has recently dropped out.
I know, it was very disappointing and depressing.
Yeah, but on the positive side, he's, I think, launching a podcast. So
really cool.
Yeah, he just announced that. I'm sure he'll try to talk you into trying to come on to the podcast. I would love
to. So talk about Ratatouille.
Yeah, maybe he'll be more welcoming of the Ratatouille argument. What are your thoughts on his concerns of the displacement of jobs, of automation, sort of of course, there's positive impacts that could come from automation and AI, but there could also be negative impacts. And within that framework, what are your thoughts about universal basic income? So these interesting new ideas of how we can empower people in the economy.
I think he was 100% right on almost every dimension. We see this in Square's business. I mean, he identified truck drivers. I'm from Missouri. And he certainly pointed to the concern and the issue that people from where I'm from feel every single day that is often invisible and not talked about enough. You know, the next big one is cashiers. This is where it pertains to Square's business. We are seeing more and more of the point of sale move to the individual customer's hand in the form of their phone and apps and pre-order and order ahead. We're seeing more kiosks. We're seeing more things like Amazon Go. And the number of workers as a cashier in retail is immense. And, you know, there's no real answers on how they transform their skills and work into something else. And I think that does lead to a lot of really negative ramifications. And the important point that he brought up around universal basic income is, given that the shift is going to come, and given it's going to take time to set people up with new skills and new careers, they need to have a floor to be able to survive. And this $1,000 a month is such a floor. It's not going to incentivize you to quit your job because it's not enough, but it will enable you to not have to worry as much about just getting on day to day, so that you can focus on what am I going to do now, and what skills do I need to acquire? And I think you know, a lot of people point to the fact that, you know, during the industrial age, we had the same concerns around automation, factory lines, and everything worked out okay. But the biggest change is just the velocity and the centralization of a lot of the things that make this work, which is the data and the algorithms that work on this data. But I think it was spot on with identifying the problem and proposing solutions that would actually work. At least that we'd learn from, that you could expand or evolve. But I mean, I think UBI is well past its due. I mean, it was certainly trumpeted by Martin Luther King and even before him as well.
And like you said, like the exact $1,000 mark might not be the correct one, but you should take the steps to try to implement these solutions and see what works.
100%.
A conversation with Andrew Yang and Tom Perez.
Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. This is a really exciting afternoon for me, and I also think for Andrew. And so we're going to jump right in. Again, Andrew, thank you for coming back to campus, albeit virtually. It's great to have you, and I know I speak on behalf of everybody who's watching this in saying we're really thrilled to have you here.
I lived in New Pembroke number 4, which
wow.
I don't know if they still tell you that when you show up to Brown, but it was something like, there's a 50% chance you're going to meet your future mate freshman year. So we're all looking at each other being like, really? So I...
Tell us about your journey from young graduate to erstwhile presidential candidate who had a remarkable run.
I was probably the last person at Brown that anyone thought was going to run for president. My main pursuits were the Taekwondo club, going to the gym, and playing video games. I mean, it's pretty normal stuff. Like, no one was like, "Ooh, that guy's going places." I don't think that was really the vibe. So I was joking with you that Brown has to fix the world that Harvard broke, because at this point you have so many of our institutions that have gone off the rails. And a lot of entrepreneurship is about being someone who will actually try and solve problems or improve the world or take your vision for something that's missing.
What did your wife say when you first told her, I'm thinking about running for president?
No, she didn't take it that seriously at first. I mean, we'd been married for a while, so she knows I'm entrepreneurial, but I think that one's still sort of. My wife was not fully like believing that I was going to do this until I think I had left Venture for America, and then she was like, "I guess you really are going to do this."
Back in February, if you were laying odds on who's going to be on the debate stage for the debate before the New Hampshire primary, the first in the nation primary in early February, I don't think a lot of people would have laid a lot of odds on Andrew Yang still being on the debate stage for that debate. And fast forward, it was a Friday evening before the New Hampshire primary, and you had earned your way onto the debate stage. What do you think about I had the privilege of obviously spending a lot of time with you in all those debates. And what always struck me, Andrew, was the passion of your following. If you don't have a passionate following, you're always going to have challenges. And the team you assembled, the voters and supporters you earned, they stuck with you, and it was truly remarkable.
You start out and you're the anonymous Asian non-politician who wants to give everyone money. And people are like, well, that seems pretty far out. My kids really liked the bus. I mean, the first time I showed up in New Hampshire was like I was just driving my used Subaru, and there was like one person at the event, and I was like, all right, like, I guess this will go someplace. Like, we'll just keep building from here.
By chance, I ran into you and your wife, and we had a very nice conversation for about 10 minutes or so. And I remember both watching you at the debate and then reflecting on that conversation. And I said to someone on my team, I just had a really good conversation with Andrew and family. And he appears to me to be in a really remarkable place, because he's left it all on the table. He has done remarkably well. I think he has a pretty good situational awareness.
I started a new organization, Humanity Forward.
You may be out of the race, but you're not out of the fight. And that organization is a great example of it. Getting to know people like you. And what really inspires me right now is the unity of our candidates and the character of all of you. I want to turn to questions now from students, and I'm going to turn this over to Ed. But I want to, before we do that, simply thank you. I think you are the best spirit of Brown University. And
that's so kind.
Everything you stood for. My son, who's 17 years old, Andrew, he has so many friends who are Yang gangers, and will always be. And this was their first foray into politics, and you were the first person who inspired them. That's a hell of a legacy, and that's a legacy that will truly endure.
Oh, that's so kind. I need to thank your son, and
super thanks to you both for getting us off, and it's just such an inspiring start. So let's turn to the students.
You can't have a stay-at-home order and then have an election the same day. I mean, that's that's not feasible. Guess what? Tens of millions of Americans just got $1,200 in their bank account, and I have a feeling that they liked it. I have a feeling that they saw, like, hey, this actually really helps me and my family.
In the midst of this pandemic, there was only one country that had to have a conversation about paid leave, and that was the United States. Everywhere else in the world is ahead of us. We're the only, I think, actually, might be us and Papua New Guinea.
There are only 2 countries in the world that don't have paid family leave for new moms: the United States of America and Papua New Guinea. That is the entire list, and we need to get off this list as soon as possible.
Although Papua New Guinea, someone from Papua New Guinea told me that they're working on it. So
yeah, they just passed it. I think we might be alone in a minute, Tom.
So I think that we're now alone.
I thought having an Asian American on the debate stage would be helpful. I was very happy that I made 7. And so I got to do it over and over again.
I think we can stay till 5:15. I know this was supposed to end at 5, but I have a feeling, I'm looking at the queue of questions, and we can both last another 15 minutes.
Fantastic.
You hear that, Noah? Tom Perez says, make some memes, make some Biden memes. Everyone wants like this. I used to joke that I have like 2 goals, like 1, abolish poverty, and 2, stay married. And I'm happy to say, I accomplished the second goal, and it looks like the first goal might be on its way.
When I look at Andrew Yang and I look at Doug Jones, who's a senator from Alabama, who we helped win, the connective tissue there in them and so many other people is authenticity. There's not a phony bone in their body. I think people are really on the lookout for folks with authenticity, folks with common decency, folks that they can look at their children and say, I want you to emulate that person, because that person, you may not agree with everything that's coming out of her mouth or his mouth, but that person is speaking authentically, is not making stuff up, and truly seems to have at his or her root the best interest of ordinary folks at heart. And I think that's part of the, why did Andrew Yang make it all the way to New Hampshire when no one knew who the hell he was other than his family 18 months earlier? And it was a lot of what he did and how he inspired people. I couldn't agree more. And the last point that Andrew made was going to be one of the first points that I made, which is that this is a win-win set of opportunities. I agree with everything Andrew said about automation. We have a real problem. This gets back to something Andrew said earlier. I mean, the differences here are night and day.
What's next for Andrew Yang? Another campaign?
I'm going to run for office again at some point. Thank you, Tom. We'll be back next week. Just kidding. The weekly Yang Perez lecture, or Perez Yang lecture. No, I'm just kidding.
The reason I wanted you to hear from Andrew Yang is you all have a remarkable credential you're about to get, and a moral and ethical foundation that it gives you. And don't ever hesitate in life to take risk. Don't jump off a 20-story building without a parachute. That's called stupidity. But Andrew took a remarkable leap in running for president. And it is an inspiring leap that he has taken. And what I learned at Brown was there's no such thing as failure. The only failure is the failure to swing the bat. So get up there, get out there, and swing the bat and swing it hard. That's my advice to all of you.
Awesome. Thanks.